Hello and welcome to the Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two we've read. I'm your host Scott and I'm not alone. Toby's here with me. This episode we'll be talking about Stephen King's The Dark Half. It's going to be pretty spoiler heavy, but if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side. Go from
No.
We're going.
This is how it goes. This is how we run it. Sure, let's just do it. So, yeah. Hello. So, go. Do you want to start or shall I?
I think we've both been reading on and off Stephen King since we were fairly young. I think you kind of early teens and me later teens.
Yeah, I think 16 was the first time I read a Stephen King book.
I do remember reading Insomnia doing work experience. I can't remember if that was school or college, so either 16, 17 or 18 sort of age. And I'm pretty sure Insomnia was my first Stephen King.
That's an odd one
I
to start with.
do remember initially not knowing anything about Stephen King apart from The Shining, but purely because of the cover and the elusive blog on the back, thinking it was a murder mystery.
Yes.
About someone who killed someone by snuffing them with a pillow, just because the cover is an indent of a person's head in a pillow, and being...
Shows you how important a cover of a book is.
Right, and then being pretty pleasantly surprised when it was...
I haven't read it. So
I can't go into it. The Crimson King, a lot of fantasy elements based around elderly people. In the UK, you can pretty much go into any secondhand store and find something of his for £1 or £2.
Yeah. Here
we are in adulthood, still going, picking away at his. Doesn't help that he's still going.
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 a year. I can't get rid of his.
Well, the next one is out.
90s backlog, not let alone his 2000s.
Yeah. Tuesday is the next one. It's released.
Tuesday?
Yeah, it comes out on Tuesday. If It Bleeds.
Oh, crikey. That's a compilation?
It's a compilation, 4 short novellas, I think, and it's got the sequel to The Outsider in it.
Oh, okay, nice.
You haven't read The Outsider yet, have you?
No, I did know when we were talking the other day, you are a lot more well-read with his more recent stuff.
Yeah, present.
I guess the last 20 years, post-millennial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read a few, but I'm sort of making my way through his backlog still.
Yeah, which is weird, because I came into Stephen King, obviously, with this one, The Dark Half, and then... I read a few others, but like really strange ones, like you said earlier on, Dolores Claiborne. I read that. I think that was the second one I read. But it was that period that got me into it. But then I drifted off for a while and didn't read much at all, and then came back in with the modern stuff. Well, I think probably around, I don't know, can't remember exactly which one it was of the modern stuff that got me back into it. But Revival, I remember reading that, and then Doctor Sleep, and then the Mercedes trilogy, so on and so forth.
I think around that time I was reading a lot of vampire stuff. I don't know if you know. Let me pronounce it. Necromancerscope.
Oh yeah.
Necroscope.
I'm very
they had these incredibly vivid covers.
Yes. There was 3 of them, wasn't there?
Design of like a skull with worms coming out of it.
Like H.R. Geiger looking.
Yes.
So The Dark Half, talking about Dark Half, that's definitely the first, this is the first Stephen King book I ever read. So, and I don't know where I got it from. I think I might have picked it up out of, it's probably a charity shop. But again, for me, I hadn't read much in that point in time, but it is quite a thick book. It's not small.
Probably going on 300-400 pages, I guess.
It is, just 405 pages.
Okay.
I think it was mostly the cover that got me into it, especially the UK cover. The George Stark is not a very nice guy. I think that sold it. And then when I read the inside cover, you get the synopsis, it just grabbed me straight away. And then that was it. I was hooked. So I was at college doing my degree in caring, or a course in caring, and I would read it underneath the desk while the teacher was giving lectures. Just I got into trouble doing that once. So do you want to tell our esteemed viewers what the book is about, if those that haven't read it, give an overview?
So it's about an author who has a nom de plume, like an alter personality, where he writes books. So he had a little bit of success with his first book and then didn't live up to expectation. And just for money and to write books that wouldn't be under the microscope, he came up with an alter ego and wrote some violent crime novels.
Mm-hmm.
And the alter ego he wrote under was George Stark. Those became more successful than anything he ever wrote, at least commercially. I've jumped something here, which is the intro to the whole book.
Yeah.
Which is quite a Stephen King thing to do. I guess it's quite a...
What did you think to that opening?
I kind of liked it. It sets that... it sets the precedent. It's... I guess
that's what got me straight
fairly
away.
big in the horror genre to have an incident out of time and place to where our main story will be. And in this case, he's about 11 years old and he has seizures. And the doctors, thinking there's a tumor, open up his brain and find a bit of a nose, an eyeball, some teeth, and some hair. And basically say that in embryo, he absorbed...
the nurses, doesn't it?
There is a nurse who runs out the room screaming.
Yes.
And the surgeon...
This is the bit in the book that I would just like...
This is the bang opening, right? The nurse does run out screaming. So I guess instantly we know it's an adult book. We're getting pretty grotesque imagery of eyeballs in brains and the language.
Remember it being very vivid.
Right. So they remove it and the kids kind of find... And that's, the closing opening. Cut to...
Once they remove it, doesn't the sparrows turn up and take it away?
It does, but we don't know that till later. Like, as far as that opening goes, yep, they had a nice little operation, and the doctor sort of has a bit of curiosity, but says this kind of thing can happen with in embryo absorption. So we cut to a PR stunt 30 years later.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure how old he is, but he's got to be in his 30s. He's married and he has 2 kids who are toddlers, and they're twins, which I guess means something because the book will go in and out of twins a lot.
Yeah, the whole psychic
right. He's just killed off his alter ego writer, so he had some success.
Right, that's his publicity stunt. Yeah.
Right, he's had some success as a writer, doing like pulp, violent novels, but he's now killed that side of his life off. And just for an interview photo shoot in a magazine, a reporter has created a tombstone for his alter ego, and they're pictured in a cemetery, him and his wife standing on it, laughing. That night, the graveyard owner, who this was kind of fun for me. Stephen King has a thing of giving people nicknames because they've been around so long. In this case, he introduces the graveyard keeper, who is Steve Holt, but he's known around here as Steve Digger, or just Digger, because he digs graveyards. So what he does became his nickname. And he finds a hole in the cemetery where he does sort of muse that this looks like someone has climbed out of it, not dug in. And he thinks this is the spot where the photo shoot happened. But keep in mind, there was no body there. It was just a PR stunt. And this made me laugh because in Steve Digger's analysis of the vandals and what happened, he says, if you follow these footprints, they went right through my flowers. This guy kicked my flowers over. I wouldn't want to mess with a guy who would do that kind of thing. Yeah, I guess kicking the flowers over was a step too far. We kind of follow the shadow of this person, and we get our first murder of the book. So after climbing out of this graveyard, he then hitchhikes into town. The person who picks him up is another town local, so you get the sense it's that main... I think this is Castle Rock, which is about 5 of his books are set in here, and mention of it is in a lot more. So everyone kind of knows everyone. The person picking up the hitchhiker has a fake leg, who is found in the morning beaten to death with his fake leg, which is a good start to the violence ensuing. The police instantly are pulled over to Tad Beaumont because it fits the description
of one of his killings, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's sort of a nosy neighbour who is sort of narrating what she saw, and the description kind of fits him.
So at the point in the story now that there's somebody's going around killing people that are connected to the death of George Stark, if I'm right.
Yeah, so this first person, it seems like there isn't a connection other than they knew him from around town. And he is almost the anomaly, this first guy with the prosthetic leg, because it just seemed like he killed him because it was the first guy he met.
Right, okay.
But the spree that follows is the person who wrote the article, his publisher. So part of the reason why he killed his alter ego was that another writer who has no success, and I think not a writer, just an aspiring writer, came across it and tried to blackmail him.
That's it.
Rather than being blackmailed, just the final straw for him.
Yeah.
But these are countrywide. These are happening in other cities and states in New York.
Yeah. The killing.
Often we don't witness the murder. I think for at least two of them, we have a witness account of someone coming across the scene. This is where Alan Panghorn comes in, I think, because the fingerprints match Tad Beaumont's.
That's exactly it, this is where I want to interject. He revisits this idea of an impossible killing. Like, all the evidence is there to say Tad did it.
Right.
But Tad has foolproof alibis for the locations that he's in at the times of the killing. So he couldn't have done it, but yet his prints are there.
Right.
And he does this exact same thing in The Outsider.
Right, that's one of his more recent ones, the last 3 or 4 years, which HBO just released a season 1, which I haven't watched or seen, but I know the concept, which is pretty interesting, I guess. He's coming back to old ideas, and I guess from what I know about The Outsider, correct me if I'm wrong, is it very court case? Is it very...
There's some elements of court, but it's not court case, no.
Okay, so, yeah, I guess...
Road trip movie.
Okay. That I did not know. I thought it was all, I guess I pictured like he was arrested, so he couldn't road trip because, he was in jail and awaiting trial. But I haven't read it, so I just...
I don't want to ruin it.
All right, well, we'll do that one another time once I've read it.
But yeah, so yeah, Thad is...
So they threw a party on the night of a murder, so that's their alibi. And for some reason, his wife is just really quite bitchy to some of the other guests whilst talking to the FBI. She is basically going something, well, I'm going to paraphrase, but like, oh yes, your friend from work, Steve, was there. And that god-awful girl he's been dating, X and X, isn't she horrible, the things she says and does, which struck me as something you probably wouldn't go into detail in when you're being quizzed for murder by the FBI. Yeah. But it's over and done, and the book goes on. But it did spike out a little. With the Alan Panghorn detective, I did notice we do get 2 references back to back. One is about a Saint Bernard that went mad and killed people. I think you know what that reference is, to Cujo. And then he talks about a gruesome murder. I don't want to give this away, but there's a reference to the Dead Zone.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure if you've read.
No, not yet.
So I won't give away, because it kind of gives away a midpoint twist.
Okay.
It's quite a subtle reference, but they're both there. And I guess that's just for fans of him.
Yeah.
As we know, that we pretty early on as the reader know what the deal is, that it is in fact a physical manifestation of this alter ego who's come back to killing people. But actually a fair amount of the book is Panghorn trying to figure out how and why this is happening, which is not odd for us, but it takes up a lot of pages when we know his theories aren't right.
Right, okay. That's interesting. So this is the bit that I don't really remember.
Right.
So I remember the beginning, I remember the end, and I remember some of the killings, but the actual bulk of what makes the book up, I guess, like you're saying now.
Because Tad and his wife quickly, I would say fairly quickly, get into the fact that the alter egos come to life.
Yeah, they believe it quite straight up forward, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a psychic connection between Tad and Stark, they can sort of hypnotically tune into each other without realizing.
That's right, yes. And there's a whole thing with typewriters and pencils, if I remember rightly.
Yes. So when Tad wrote his own novels, he would use a typewriter.
Yes, that's
and almost like when you hear about actors getting into character, he had some ways of writing that he wouldn't, but he believed his alter ego would. He kind of created a backstory for this alter ego, like he'd done time in prison and was just not a real nice guy, a shady background, and he always wrote his novels in pencil.
A specific type of pencil as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it goes into the paper, the pencil, the whole methoding. We do find around the crime scenes there are written things such as the sparrows are gathering.
Yeah, sparrows are flying.
And we don't really know what this means, but Tad has started to hear the flapping of birds, and he kind of puts it down to migraines and stuff. We have the writer bang to rights at the murder scene with people saying the guy kind of looked like him, and more importantly, his fingerprints.
I remember, just to digress quickly, I remember one of the killings being really sort of just stuck in my head ever since, and that was the guy that was, can't remember how he was killed, but I just remember there'd be like a silhouette or shadow on the wall when the detectives come in, and his penis is like down his throat or something like that, sticking out. He chops his penis off and sticks it in his throat, and then you see it in the reflecting on the wall or something like that.
All of the deaths are pretty gruesome and mutilated corpses. A lot of threats to popping out eyeballs. Later on, we'll get a lot of threats towards like really young, the children. So one day, Thad watches one of his babies sort of fall off something. It's fine. It's just like a bruised arm. But then when changing the twin, he notices that the other baby has the same bruises. And that sort of enforces his connection, what he believes is connection. And they kind of discover all this talk of sparrows that Stark doesn't know anything about that there's a blind spot in him because he doesn't know. Like they start talking to each other. Stark starts calling him up to poke at him, and I guess this is where we realize that Stark wants him to keep writing. Like the only way for him to stay alive is for Thad to write another novel under his name. And so the plot progresses. There's more threats and murder, but we get to the point where Stark kidnaps the wife and the babies. It's not a particularly sophisticated plan.
No.
He kind of kills the cops and grabs her.
Not Alan, though.
No, just the wife and the kids. And then I guess it's where it's all right. It feels a bit convoluted and filling. Because he's being tailed by cops for his own protection, Alan has to kind of set up escaping them so he can sort of play ball with this guy. Yeah. So he's at his university and he has to come up with some ridiculous, I need to use the bathroom, out of a window, running away.
Yeah.
So this is where Alan Panghorn, the detective on the case, finds the original surgeon and quizzes him. It's not really clear why. So they've been trying to convince him all along that the manifestation has come real, which we'll come back to.
Yeah.
I want to ask you if you would have the balls to tell police that you think actual is involved. And this is where we find out after he removed the eye and teeth as the surgery from when he was young.
Yeah.
Although he wasn't there, thousands, if not millions, of swallows swarmed the hospital and just caused a ruckus.
Yeah.
And so...
Starlings.
Yes.
Yes. One of those.
Right. Yeah. So we have this understanding that they're important. Like you sort of think at the beginning they're just a dark sign.
Yeah.
Many films would just use crows or ravens cawing, but they're not really involved. They're just a sign of things to come. I guess folklore, ravens, crows, sparrows are harbingers of of death, and Greek mythology and stuff. They carry souls back and forward.
That's exactly it. The birds in this book are, I think, they're mythological.
Right.
It is that they carry spirits off to the other realm.
Right. So to kind of cut forward a bit, we end up with Pranghorn, the wife, and the 2 toddlers, all in a summer house in Maine, kind of taken hostage.
Like it's down a long drive in a forest by a lake, lots of trees.
Yes, because the imagery that they see coming in is everything is covered by the birds, like everything. Like imagine Hitchcock's birds.
Cars rolling in and he's crushing over them as he's driving in.
Right. He does exactly say that, like the only way to get through is just to squash a few of them. And I think he talks about like some trees would fall over and a sparrow weighs nothing. So how many are there to wait through? And basically can't conceive of how many there are. He's like, I have no idea if this is millions or billions, as far as the eye can see. But there is a circle around the house where they just won't cross, like an invisible barrier. And we do learn that Stark has no idea. He hasn't looked out the window, so he hasn't seen them. And like we said, it's his blind spot.
Yeah.
So Thad goes in and they go upstairs with the babies, I guess to keep the 2 downstairs not running off. And they start writing the new novel.
Yeah.
And the wife is kind of perplexed because she starts to see him enjoying it.
Yes.
Her husband enjoying it. And at one point she says that she couldn't tell the difference. So up until now, Stark has been sort of morphing and falling apart and basically rotting. And now that they've started writing, he's sort of coming more and more to life. This is the most we get to an explanation where they kind of say, you're the ghost. Some sort of a word becomes a thing, ghost.
Yeah.
It's pretty breezed over, and we'll talk about it later, but I guess it's for the best.
Yeah.
And there's even a line where George says, it doesn't matter where I came from, all that matters is I'm here.
Yeah.
Which covers that, I guess.
Yeah.
Whilst they're writing, George's plan is, I don't know if I missed this, I'm sure I did, but he pulls out a bird whistle and blows it, and the surrounding swallows just...
Dad does this, not George, yeah?
Yes, obviously. Sorry, when I said that, I meant the other thing.
Cool.
And the birds basically descend on the house, and there's a fight ensuing, but overly, Stark is just taken by the sparrows, and pretty sure everyone else lives.
Yeah, everyone else lives.
This is what I remember, is that it's a very abrupt ending. And I've realised I do like books that have an afterward, like they were moving into their new house 1 year later and this thing happened, sort of thing, because it sort of ends about 1 minute after his body is taken away and they're hugging.
Yeah, completely.
But I guess the only thing of note here is that his wife sort of says, I don't know what will happen. I feel like I've seen too much of my husband. His dark half is sort of back in him. So there's a sort of implication that he
doesn't like what she's seen.
Bad side. Yeah, or he has a bad side that he's willing to let out.
So
that is...
you thought the ending was abrupt?
Not the ending action, but just the last sentence.
It kind of finishes in the house. Everybody following along, gone.
Yeah, they literally hug it out as the camera fades to black or pulls up or something. What were your impressions of the book when you finished it?
My impression, it's like I said, it was my first ever Stephen King book. I liked it so much that I carried on and now became a collector of his works. And I thought it just, the way he wrote the way he writes is consistent, I think, in the way that it affects me. When I'm reading his books, I find myself at certain periods, not all the way through the book, because I'll be dead at the end of it, but at certain periods where like a 5-pager, where you forget that where you are, what you're doing, to breathe even, and you're just like, this is what the and then suddenly the climax hits and it's like, and breathe, and then you suddenly look up and you're like, Jesus Christ, I've been sat on this platform for the last 20 minutes, the train I wanted has gone past, completely missed it, but whoa, your heart is pounding in your chest. I haven't had another writer do that to me the way that he does it. And this was the first book that he did it to me in. Some of the way that people die, I remember just being completely hooked, and the style and speed at some of the sections in the book and the way that it was written.
He does certainly. There are at least, I think, 2/3 of the books I've read of his just go really fast despite their size.
Mm-hmm.
Even the ones I don't particularly enjoy, they do go down easy. I don't know what it is about it. I guess none of them are particularly complicated. So I would say The Stand, of all I've read, not complicated. It just has the most characters.
Yeah.
So you need to keep focused because
Mm-hmm.
the first half of that book, before it narrows down, you're dealing with more than 20 characters, I would say.
And you're introduced to a load of characters that just die straight away anyway.
Right. It narrows down on that one. And I do remember the Dark Half. I guess I did stop reading it for a while in the middle, but the duration of reading that first half and the second half was pretty short.
Yeah.
There is also a fair amount of his that I really enjoy when I'm reading. And then when I'm finished, about 2 days later, I go, that was kind of silly. I was really into it, but now I've finished it and I can look back, that was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
That's kind of what beach reads are, right? Like, you'll read this on a beach and it'll be engrossing. Probably won't change your life, but then not everything is wanting
would
to.
You say,
value.
Are you saying that Stephen King is beach read?
He certainly can be, and I probably would say that this Dark Half is one of his beach reads.
Okay. So what is it? Give me a beach read that isn't Stephen King, just so I got a sort of ballpark.
I'd say a beach read doesn't really make you think too hard. I guess you could say it's the equivalent of a popcorn movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really personal one for him because Stephen King did have his own.
So the history part of it, his pseudonym, the person that the ego, the other person he wrote as Stephen King, Richard Bachman, is in essence the exact same thing as what George Stark is. He was able to write, as Richard Bachman, a series of books that were more graphic in nature and more bloody, in the same way that Alex Machine's killings in the Dark Half are really bloody and different to Tad's work. This is the same for Richard Bachman and Stephen King's work.
Right.
And do you know the reason? The reason he started Richard Bachman was because the publisher he was with was limiting to him to a certain amount of books a year, and he was writing more than he was allowed to publish.
Okay.
So he created Richard Bachman so he could publish more in the same year and make more money. Plus, it was an experiment to see whether he could get success as another writer that wasn't attached to him.
Right.
And then I believe it was Needful Things. Is it Needful Things? Or it might have been Blaze. But there was one of the books, I can't remember which one it was, where...
I'm pretty sure Blaze is Bachman, but Needful Things...
Richard Bachman's Thinner. He wrote that, and that was the book that somebody was like, "This is you."
It gave him away.
It was given away. And so then after that, he decided to kill him off.
Right.
And they had this fake.
So there's about 5 or 6 Bachman books, right?
Yeah, something like that.
One of them I've read is probably one of my favourite Kings, or Bachman's, I guess, which is The Long Walk.
Yes, a lot of people say that. I haven't read it, but a lot of people rave about that book.
I don't know why. I've probably read it. I think it's the only King I've read more than once. It's fairly short, and we can do that another time. Have you read any of his Bachmans? From what I've read,
no.
It doesn't feel like there's a change in style. And I guess this book is expelling a lot of demons on that. I know in the Dark Half, the reasons are a bit different. It's because he wanted to write something without a critical eye on him. But I guess that it definitely opens up things he would have experienced, I suppose, with ego taking over. And I guess it's not really heavy in the book, but they do talk about a few issues of alcoholism. And knowing that Stephen King had that.
I think that he wrote the Dark Half. I think the Dark Half is the first book he wrote after he'd given up.
Okay, because that's pretty interesting. Because I know he in interviews with The Shining, he talks about that as this is about addiction. This feels like something similar, I suppose, because
I think Tommy
torn between being a good person and being something which brings out the darker side in him. But we get later on, like I said, when they're writing together, he actually starts to enjoy it and is having fun, and he talks about that pool. the alluring and why it would be there.
Okay, so can you name a computer game that's based on a Stephen King game? Their book.
Are we talking in an era? Because I would bet that someone has done an app game of The Shining or one of his more classics. What are his big ones? I'm guessing it would be something that came from a big movie. So I'm thinking of... So was there a Shining game? Do you know?
No.
I'm guessing The Gunslinger was a bit too coldish to have a game. Dreamcatcher. I feel like...
I read Dreamcatcher, but I can't imagine that would make a good game, would it?
All right. Okay, you have to give me the answer.
Okay, so there's... I believe, if I'm right, if I can remember, I can't remember exactly, but it's 3 or 5 games that have been made into Stephen King books. The Lawnmower Man.
Oh, of course, yeah. That is...
that was made into a game. F13.
Which one?
F13, which is a game based loosely around things to do with Stephen King.
Okay, so that's like a Stephen King universe.
And I'm drawing a blank now. I'm sure there's 2 others, but they're not, like, very, very loose, hardly anything to do with Stephen King at all, but nods too. And then the only official Stephen King game that was released was, and I'll go see if I can find it, see if I can share my screen with you and show you. Desktop. Look at this. This is classic. Can you see this?
Game. They made a game out of this.
Yeah. It's mad. I found this earlier on. I was like, no way.
Of entertainment software.
The pack song. Here we go.
Oh wow, they're starting at the beginning. We're getting our prelude to the story. Hey, I need to give it a little interjection here. Me and Toby got so carried away, we actually forgot to describe what we were watching. That is a 1992 point-and-click interface game of the George Romero movie, The Dark Half. It's not hard to find a walkthrough of the entire game, so if you're particularly interested, have a root around on YouTube and I'm sure you can find it. It's pretty colourful and it looks pretty fun. I also have to note that throughout this, we're going to be interchanging the name Tad and Thad mistakenly. It is in fact Thad, we just keep getting it wrong. But I'll get back to the podcast now.
So yeah,
look how I pictured him.
It's mad, isn't it?
That is something that did not existed, and yeah, I might have a look at a walkthrough of that.
Yeah. I thought that was a really cool little thing.
So talking of spinning off of the media, we can go back to the film. Sorry, I sort of cut you off earlier.
Yes, the film. I don't really. I know I've watched the film. I don't really remember it. I remember Tim Hutton was in it. He was quite a good actor at the time.
Apart from that, it's my problem with Timothy Hutton. I have seen The Dark Half, and that's the only thing I've seen him in. So people kind of say his name like I should know it from.
Yeah, he's in a lot of FX TV series. He's in one of those that was quite long running. He was in recently House on Haunting Hill of Hill House.
Oh, he's the dad?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. Then yes, I do know who he is. Cool. I don't remember the film so much, but I do remember thinking they've almost stuck too closely to the book.
It was very close, yeah.
It was kind of boring in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I enjoyed it, but like, there's no surprises.
No. But that's getting into a whole different realm, isn't it? Like, when you're telling a story of a story in a different format, you can't really change it up too much.
Well, this is the huge issue, especially nowadays, that a lot of people have with things where they're making it into a film from a cartoon, a book, a comic, anything, is that they do change it, and the diehard fans kind of go crazy because that thing they've changed was the pinnacle point of it.
Yeah.
But it's a fine line of...
a prime example of getting it right currently is Final Fantasy VII Remastered. They've just released that, the re-release of a game that was like 20 years old or something now. Brought it bang up to date, new graphics, and added extra bits to it without messing too much with the core experience. So I think it can be done.
I mean, so recently we've had the It films made into films in the last few years. They're pretty well received. The first part, certainly. The second part, it's pretty unanimous decision that it's not that good and a bit dull and a bit long.
I enjoyed the second part a lot.
I did, but certainly not a lot. I've seen it twice now. I saw it in the cinema, and then I watched it on an airplane. And the second viewing, I didn't finish.
Right.
It was just an onslaught of here he is here, here he is there.
Yeah.
But that's an example of something that changed. Like, I would still say you could read the book and get a lot from that. In a sense of surprises. It's not.
Yes. I know exactly what you mean now. Yeah.
But there are some films I can only think of a bit of an obscure example.
But then that ties beautifully back to your beach read scenario. If you think about it, like the Dark Half film and book, or the film is so almost a mirror of the book and doesn't miss anything out because the book is so simple.
Right.
An awful lot going on in it. There isn't that many layers, as it were, like there is in, say, It, or Insomnia, or The Stand, which you wouldn't say were beach reads.
Right. I'd say the Dark Half is something you don't really need to cut, because for time and, like you said, simplicity, you're already kind of at the minimum. I'm pretty sure they even keep all the names the same, right, to all the characters, which is, I kind of find rare, and I never really know why. But often you'll watch a film from your book, and for some reason they've just changed the character's name for no discernible reason other than the screenwriter thought it rolled off the tongue better. I guess nowadays it happens a bit less and less because they're banking on the fan base of these things.
Yeah.
But it is always something I always notice when character names change for no reason.
Neighbours.
Right.
Okay, here's another question for you. We're not in the middle of something, are we? I can just throw a question in, can't I?
No.
Which of these two covers do you think is better? Why the different covers? And what is this cover? Why did the US get this one?
Can you hold up the US a bit closer? Because to me it looks like, is there a picture there? It just looks like a light smear.
It is.
I mean, they're both relying on his name, right? His name is pretty much always the biggest thing on a book, unless it's a movie tie-in. Then it will be the poster cover.
It kind of looks like a something through frosted glass.
If you pick up the US edition in a store and you didn't know anything about it, you don't know what genre that is. Is that a thriller? Is that a kidnap thing? We get, obviously, the title and the colouring. It's, a serious book and it's not a comedy, but you would not know that it is a horror, I suppose. And I guess with the other cover, you kind of get the tongue-in-cheek of the UK cover, right?
Yeah. This is very sort of...
Like, I think if you were reading this and then you're not really into paranormal or fantasy, and the plot unfolded as it does, you kind of wouldn't be too upset or surprised, and you probably keep going.
Surprises based on the
right.
You're getting yourself into. Whereas this, I would say that this is a horror cover, but a nondescript.
Right, like this could easily be if you said this is a detective book and there's a few in the series, I would also believe that.
Yeah.
It basically gives nothing away for better or worse. And in this case, I would say worse, especially because it's Stephen King, who by this stage was a global name, right?
Yeah. So these with Viking, the publisher Viking here. And because he was second on the bestseller lists that year, that was the catalyst, or one of the catalysts for him changing his publishers. Again, because he didn't want to be second on the charts. He wanted to be the top of the charts.
What was he second to?
Tom Clancy.
Oh, I mean, I don't know, man. That kind of feels a bit strict, right?
Yeah.
Maybe write a better book next time. Maybe. I mean, Clancy's still big, right? So he'd written a bunch of hugely famous novels before this one.
Yeah. Like
It and The Stand and Salem's Lot and Carrie, obviously. This is, did you say it was a 90s book?
Yes, 92.
92, okay. And he probably started Carrie in 79? So he had a decade of novels.
79 or 74, Carrie.
I mean, he had enough time to write a bunch of novels under another author. And so
this was 89.
Okay. Where would you rank this on his list?
Of ones I've read? Right, so that is tricky because I don't really... because it's the first one I read. I hold it in very
in your heart.
Yeah, but things like The Stand and The Shining were really, really good.
I guess like the beach read, especially if Stephen King is, some of them feel like they have a bit more volume and depth behind them that you can sort of pick apart whether it's there or not. Whereas the Dark Half, I guess it's kind of on the nose.
The beach read
kind of says what it's about. You know what I mean? It doesn't really hide any of its themes or anything.
Yeah, I can't give it a position. It's in the top 5 Stephen King books I've ever read.
5, that is a position. That's a high position.
It's difficult because I don't categorize. I just like it's a body of work, and then there's just on the whole, I think it's all really good. There isn't anything.
I would say, as much as I enjoyed it, it's on his more forgettable side. Like it isn't something I'm going to be raving about.
No,
it hasn't made that list, right? Like Carrie and The Shining and the seminal.
What if you were to recommend a Stephen King book to a non-Stephen King book reader? Which one would you tell them to read first?
Oh, that's a good one, I guess. Like I said, I really like The Long Walk, and I feel like that's pretty representative of his, and it's a quick read.
Yeah, but he's writing it someone else, though, isn't he? So.
That is true. That is true. I had a question, but it slipped my mind. Do you think you would read this again?
I'm tempted to, yeah, definitely. It's one of the ones I would like to read again because I read it so long ago.
All right. I think that's all my thoughts on The Dark Half.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot more out of it than I thought we would. Hey, we're going to wrap it up around here. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day.